Welcome back to Camo Sports, the sports podcast where we talk about the latest news that happened across sports. And I know right now the NBA playoffs is going on, but we're going to take a quick break from that. And next week, I'll tell you about some of the rounds and the games that have been happening. But today, we're actually going to do the 50 subscriber special that I was promising. And we're going to have a special guest. And that special guest is obviously no other than my dad, Dr. Kirkman Sayak.
Hey,
Anyway, so I know you're a big sports fan, but the NBA, you're probably not as in tune as you have been
mm,
back in the day when it was more exciting to watch and there wasn't LeBron flopping 24/7 and acting like he just got shot on the court.
ratings, because the ratings are down, you can go ahead and count me in those numbers being in the lower ratings. Yes.
Yeah, there you go. But I know you still every Saturday watch college football, and I know you have a very strong opinion about this. So that is exactly what we're going to talk about because I still haven't covered what has happened in the past several weeks. So I don't know how to say his last name. Sorry, forgive me, but the Nico Iamaleava,
Good.
was that how you say
Yep.
it? Do you know how to say it?
Nico.
Close enough?
Yeah.
However you say it. Nico, the former quarterback from Tennessee, just transferred to UCLA after a NIL dispute,
Yeah.
and it was reported that he wanted close to, and this is all up for grabs, we don't really know,
Right.
but apparently he wanted a $3 to $4 million raise
Right.
from what he got already when he was already making a boatload of money, especially with the caliber of quarterback he has when he only threw for 2,600 yards last year, 19 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. And any Tennessee fan, if you watch the games, it was missed throw after missed throw. He is crazy talented and has a lot of potential, of course. It's another Anthony Richardson situation. He
Good
just
one.
doesn't produce on the field. And if we look at the rankings from the past year as far as like QB rankings, if I had to give my QB rankings, he'd probably be about the ninth rated quarterback from the SEC last
Fair.
season. And Carson Beck is below him, obviously. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Agreed.
what is your thoughts on the state of college football
Oh,
of
jeez.
being no rules when it comes to NIL and all that type of
You know,
stuff?
I had this conversation with your high school coach recently. Big Tennessee fan, in fact. Shout out Coach Helton. Sadly, the statement came, I can't remember if it was from me or him, but we were in agreement. We are watching our last favorite sport die in front of us. We all grew up as sports fans. You grew up as, I remember you being, all your pro sports and everything. And we watched just about everything. College football was king always.
100%.
And sadly, as we're watching, viewership go down on all of these sports, we kind of held onto college football as being our last love that was staying true. And sadly, I think we're watching it die. We're watching the little pieces. We're watching Rome burn, is what's happening. And we're just trying to hold on to what we got. So there's a whole lot to say on this. It's a multi layered, of course. There's so many factors that go into why things are going downhill. And this Nico situation is just one of these microcosms of why it's going downhill. And it's a great example. So we can pick it apart, we can analyze it. I think what's important to say up front is certainly I'm probably going to sound like the old man barking here. I certainly grew up in a different era than the era that you watched, that you have watched, and that you're watching now. So I am largely old school. I raised you pretty much largely old school, which is
I'm
wonderful,
very old
which is
school
which
thinking.
is very awesome because you do have some good, traditional beliefs about, sport and the pageantry of college football, particularly.
Kirby Smart run the
At a
ball.
boy. So I think it's important to say up front that I am not against player empowerment in any kind of way because I feel like the feedback that we get when we start arguing about this kind of stuff is, um, well, for centuries, the NCAA has made money and hand over fist and has cheated these players and they've deserved it and stuff. I agree.
Which is all true.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Absolutely. This is a system that has needed to been fixed for a long, long time. And for these kids, for universities to generate millions and millions and millions, and they get, in return, a college education, which is nothing to laugh at, of course. but the ratio that was just egregiously wrong. So these kids
Mm-hmm.
being able to make some money has been a wonderful thing. Now, here's the problem. You cannot just swing wildly the other way and it being wrong in the other direction, where now these kids are holding
Totally.
universities hostage essentially with millions and millions of dollars. That's not the way to do it. And I get it. Some people say, well, it's our turn now. So we're going to take advantage of this system and the college players deserve this because for so many years the university was the thing. So we got to do it this way. And I find that to be wildly wrong because if there's something
Mm-hmm.
wrong, like let's say, golly, I don't want to use any kind of crazy analogy here, but let's say like there was murder going on this way. Well, to get revenge on that, I think that we should be let these people kill all of these people in retribution for that.
Totally agree.
That's
Yeah,
not
how we should do
right.
it.
Okay, murder is wrong. Whatever's wrong is wrong. Sorry, just to bring it down a little bit. So let's
That's
say, in the business world, all of this nepotism, being able to get your kid this job or whatever or something. Okay, and now in a situation where someone powerful like LeBron James can get his son drafted in the NBA because of who he is. Come on, let's be real about that. The guy didn't even start for USC, but the point is, he's all of a sudden getting
on a
drafted.
terrible team, by the way.
He's oh
On a terrible
yeah,
team.
and yeah. So for him to be able to pull that, I hear, well, it's about time. This kind of nepotism happens in the business world all the time. It's like, you know what? No, nepotism is wrong anywhere. You can't just wildly overcorrect and say now it's our turn to do that. I get it. Some people want to be like, it's eye for an eye. We should get this stuff. Well, look, the great Muhammad once said, an eye for an eye leaves everyone blind. And I think that's a wise statement. You have to just set the rules. Let's make it all fair. So I'm not against player empowerment. I want them to get paid like they're supposed to. However, we need to
100%.
have it in a way to where everything is even. So the university gets some say in this. I've told you in conversation that what's happening is we're running it like a pro sport now. And you can make the argument that
No, it is a pro sport. We're not running.
it's
It
a
is
pro,
a
yeah,
pro
it's a pro
sport.
sport. And even with free agency, and we'll talk about the transfer portal in a second, but first, the NIL situation, essentially you're running a business without contracts. Okay, so whether it's sports or whatever, that is a business model that is unsustainable. You cannot run a business without contracts because, very simply, goods and services are provided, payment is provided. If the goods and services aren't provided, then you don't get the payment. That's just basic business. So, the bad part is that right now there's no standard. So, there's no standard. You and I were talking before we went on air about how, with Nico's brother, now Arkansas is trying to sue him because he's leaving to the transfer portal
Hmm.
and they're suing him on breach of contract. So that means that
Yep.
Arkansas, with their NIL deal, must have had some sort of contractual thing that he's got to produce a certain amount of this and that in order for him to get that money. And if he left, then they're going to want some money back. So that's a breach of contract. Here's the problem. As far as we can tell, and as far as I've researched and read, there's no standard by which NIL contracts are. It's all individual on who signs you, who's the person financing this NIL deal. So it's all over the map. Some people are just left holding the bag if these kids transfer and they just get the money. And in that situation, if I was
Yeah.
a kid just looking for the bag, I just transfer all over the place and just say, hey, who's going to give me the money next?
Barry Alexander.
Yeah. And if I don't have any kind of contractual obligation to produce for you, and I just get that money, I'm going to the next place. I'm shopping around for the next thing for money. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah, I would say like my heart would be like you stick with the program that you were grew up with, you developed as your skills with. But at the end of the day, if another college is offering me $3 million and I'm a broke college kid,
Right.
what am I gonna do?
Right. Yeah. You're,
I
you're
have to
going to
go.
go. So, these,
Yeah.
these topics kind of overlap, but I will just bring you back to the old school. When I was watching college sports, there was rules as far as transferring and leaving and all that kind of stuff. There was an old rule called Proposition 48. So Prop 48 said you can transfer, that's fine, but you have to sit out a year and before you can play for that university. And the idea behind that was so that way you couldn't just automatically stack the deck and a bunch of people transfer in and just try to win, something or
Yeah.
whatever.
You had to have a legitimate
Right.
reason.
And yeah, and there also had to be a legitimate reason. Prop
Yeah.
48 wasn't just, granted. Some people with hardship, some people needed moving closer to home. I always
Yeah.
believed, and you've heard me say this, I've always believed that if the coach that recruited you leaves, you should get the
I agree with
the
the
uh,
yeah, I
the
agree with
option
that.
to leave also because you have several friends that played next level. People commit to a coach that recruits them. They make these relationships, they fall in love with them, they become family. Well, all of a sudden, this father figure
100%.
that
Yeah.
was going to take you on in the next level leaves. Well, of course, you want to go, to where they go to. You don't necessarily have the love for the university. You fell in love with the coaching staff, and now the coaching staff leaves. You should have the chance to leave. I totally agree with those kind of things. But should there be some kind
I
of
totally agree,
rules
yeah.
on that? I'm kind of bleeding in, I know, to the transfer portal thing. So what the heck? Let's just go ahead and talk about it. So
Yeah, go
yeah,
ahead
I
and
mean the
get into
transfer
it.
portal is just the wild west now. So now we're running a sport with free agency with no rules. And so
With no rules at
so
all.
this is
It's essentially if we went into training camp of the NFL season and we're in like week 3 and the coaches finally deciding he's going to play here, he's going to play here, and then all of a sudden a guy can go, "Hey, I want $5 million," or "Practice is not happening."
right. Yeah.
What?
And just it just leaves.
When is that? Why is that okay?
Right now, transfer portal. I feel like once COVID hit, it all kind of all the rules got so loose on how you can transfer because of the different hardship
Yeah,
stuff.
everybody got an extra
Everybody
year or
got the
something
extra
like that.
year. Oh my gosh! But the transfer kind of stuff because of in the COVID year, the rules just got really blurred, and so now it's almost like
Mhm.
there's no rules. This almost feels like I'm watching you when you used to play, 2K, and you turned off the free agency rules and trade rules and just stacked the team or whatever.
Oh, yeah, turn off the salary
Right,
cap,
salary
turn
caps
off,
off,
trade
and you just
override.
go, and that's what it feels like now. It feels like
Kevin Durant and LeBron are on the same
a
team.
right,
Stuff
right,
like that.
yeah, it feels like it's a kid who's turned off the rules on 2K, and it's just wide open, and you can do whatever. So
Yeah.
I'll give you some shocking stats here. So listen, I've prepared. Okay, you have your fancy little graphics, right? Well, I'm old school. I got a dry erase board, buddy. So I looked up the transfer portal right now. How many
Mhm.
kids are in the transfer portal right now? Look at this number. Can you see it?
Good lord. Yeah, I can see it.
10,271 athletes are in the transfer portal, the NCAA transfer portal. Now, here's the caveat.
Is that just football
This
or
is
is that
just
all sports?
football. Great question. This is just football.
Just
This
football. Yeah,
isn't
just football.
basketball, baseball,
Just
none of it.
good
This is
lord.
just football. Okay. Now, you may ask yourself, how many NCAA football players are there in the nation? There is 77,000 approximate. So 77,000. So 10,000 something, so that puts roughly what, almost 15%? Almost 15% of college football
Close to
is
that, yeah.
in the portal. Okay? So, I mean, let's just play with those numbers a little bit. How much longer before it's 20% going at this rate? 20%.
A
If
year?
20% of college football players are in the portal, that means, let's do that just simple math, 20%. So you go to a party at your college and you are in the room with five
I don't party, mom.
yeah, with five college football players. One of
Okay.
them is in the portal. Out of every five, one of them at least is in the portal. That's what 20%
That's
is. That's
insane.
crazy. Now, this number is of course NCAA. So this also includes Division 2 and Division 3 players, which you
Yeah.
expect to be in the portal because they're trying to jump to the next level. So that naturally happens. So you think, well, out of that 10,000,
Yeah,
out of
that's a
that
good thing.
10,000, it's
But
probably
that's
it's
not a good thing.
probably just the Division 2 and Division 3 players, right? Only 3,845 of them are D2, D3 players. What does
What
that
in the
mean?
world?
That means at a Division One, 6,400 of them are Division One players. Almost 7,000 of those, well over half,
Just
two
D1.
thirds of that 10,000 are Division One football players shopping for a new home. Let that number hit you. Let it hit you.
That's
That's
ridiculous.
that's that's as of today where that is right now.
Now, the numbers will be a little skewed because spring ball is just ending for most colleges. So most people, when they see that they're not going to be on the depth chart or they didn't like how spring practice went, they do transfer. So there is some context behind that why that number is so high today. But at the end of the day, that number is still really, really high.
And look, we should also say we can't say this without also adding the multi-layered reason of COVID. I mentioned COVID before, but we're still seeing the effects of that because
Oh, yeah,
when that
100%.
happened and then everyone was granted an extra year, that tied up that scholarship money because a kid was staying, which meant the recruiting class
Hmm.
that was coming in that next year, they didn't have the money to sign those people. A lot
Yeah,
of
the
high
money.
school kids, really good high star high school kids, at 3 and 4 stars especially, oh my gosh, had no home. They couldn't get recruited because places didn't have money. They ended up, who benefited from this?
Yeah.
One of your former coaches is dealing in the JUCO level, and they benefited greatly. They were getting studs in JUCO, and
Yeah.
still kind of are because the log jam is still there. That trickle effect is still there on kids looking for talent. So your brother, who went to an ID camp for soccer, that soccer camp was loaded with JUCO players. Here he is, a high schooler with a bunch
It's
of
so
JUCO
much
players
older
trying
than
to
him.
find a home
So
because there's just so many
yeah.
kids in the trickle down effect. So I don't, and I don't think anybody knows the answer to when is the COVID effect going to be gone, if it ever is, because
It probably would
we've just
never.
backlogged now at this point of kids wanting to play. So anyway, so you have a situation where kids are transferring. We are running a business without contracts, without a standard for contracts. So it
Uh,
all adds up to college football kind of being where it is. So let's take it back and try to redirect this to the Nico situation in particular. So
mhm.
I will tell you, without telling you my age, I know for a fact because I sat in it. The starting quarterback, when I was going through the University of Georgia, drove a broken down Toyota Celica with the passenger door that didn't work. We had to open it from the outside.
It was a
I
quarterback.
can't. I'm not gonna say, but the point. The point is, the point is now the starting quarterback for the University of Georgia was driving a Lamborghini. So, wow, has times
Yeah,
changed.
yeah.
So
And that was not his only car. Don't forget
that
about
was
that.
not
He
his
had
only
multiple cars.
car. So let's bring this back to Nico. Nico at the time was getting 2 million a year roughly from Tennessee, and so he was,
All the numbers are
but he
skewed, but
wanted
it was
four
roughly 2
million,
to 3.
right?
And the reports were that he saw what Carson Beck got and he thinks that he's better than Carson Beck, which in totality isn't far off from what Carson Beck was last season. But
Ask Lane Kiffin.
still, yeah, yeah, exactly. Exactly what Lane Kiffin said. But anyway, he saw what he got and he's like, no, I'm better than him. So I want more money. And then we get to the situation that
So
we're
he
just in
wanted,
with
if he
Tennessee.
was getting 2 million, he wanted 4 million a year. So for perspective,
So a 200, so 100% pay
yes,
raise.
yeah, he wanted 100% pay raise. So
Yeah.
to give you some
Yeah.
perspective, how crazy we're talking, because right now you think, okay, yeah, 2 million a year, starting D1 quarterback, a long storied program like Tennessee. Sure, that sounds right. Just for perspective, Brock Purdy earned 2.8 million for 3 years with the 49ers. 2.8
Yeah.
for 3 years.
Led his team to 2 NFC
Right.
championships during that time and a Super Bowl appearance.
Right. So
There you go. Oh, and fourth in the MVP,
Fourth in
something
the
like that.
MVP race, and
Yeah,
he
yeah.
only earned 2.8 for 3 years. And here is this kid
Good job, Brock.
who wanted 4 million
Get paid
for 1 year. One. Okay,
for 1 year.
so you fly too close to the cirrus and your wings are going to burn, right? So, did you get that literary reference at all? Okay. Anyway,
No.
so fly too close to the sun and you're going to get burnt. And that's exactly what happens. So, look,
Is that an Icarus
attaboy.
reference?
There we go. So, yes, Icarus reference.
Shout
So,
out, shout out Eternals, the terrible movie that we watched.
can our
Shout
next
out.
topic be the downfall of Marvel? Oh my gosh. So, anyway,
Off
off
season,
season.
off
That's our
season
off
when
season
there's no
topic.
sports going on.
I'm
I
in.
got you.
All right. So, I don't wish ill upon this kid whatsoever. Kids are kids, and I want what's best for people. I want people to succeed. I'm not a hater in any kind of way, even though I may, hate Tennessee. I'm not a hater on the kid specifically because I want him to do whatever he wants to. But a lot of people are taking this opportunity to say, "Nya, nya, you overreached." And now you get served. Well, here's whether he deserves it or not, and you agree with that, here's what he got. He went from Tennessee, which, if I'm not mistaken, has no state income tax, kind of like how Texas is, to
I'll look it up.
California, which has the worst state income tax in the nation. Or
By
wait,
far.
or is Hawaii worse? I don't know. Anyway, you can fact check me on that one. But what it ends up being.
Tennessee does not have any income
Okay,
tax.
so that comes into play,
Does
and
not
I'll
have.
talk about that in just a second because that does come into play in NIL
Yeah, it does
stuff.
not have any.
But so Nico now was wanting $4 million. He's going to get 1.8, I think, from UCLA.
I think the number was 1.75.
Okay, so
So roughly there.
somebody crunched the math on this. Shout out to Twitter. Somebody crunched the numbers and said after state taxes, excuse me, sorry, Elon. The crunched the numbers, and it turns out that after the state taxes factor in, he will be getting from his NIL deal with UCLA $919,716. So under $1 million is what he's going to be getting. He wanted $4 million. He's going to be getting $900,000, $900K. So he took a pay cut for demanding too much. And so you want to pile on this kid and dunk on him and go, "Nya, nya, fine. I guess this is your opportunity." I don't wish ill upon the kid, but I do like, and I will, in the first time in my life ever, praise Tennessee for taking a stand. Praise Tennessee. That sounded
100%.
so awful coming out of my mouth. Praise Tennessee for taking a stand. And I hope it sets a precedent amongst the other universities to say to these kids, no. No.
Yeah.
Or maybe it sets a precedent to where we can now build upon it and say, okay, if you want this money, yeah, now we go into the contract situation. Because, I mean, think about it like this. The NFL, to their contract, it's not guaranteed money, right? They have
Yeah, you have
performance
to negotiate all
clauses.
that.
They have bonus clauses. They have all of these kind of things to where the money, there is some performance to it that needs to happen. And I feel like that needs to happen on the college level, not only on the field, but I say you put the academics in there too. I say that there's classroom performance
not a bad
stuff that's
idea.
in there that your NIL is predicated upon. I say that if you don't meet some of those things, just like a job, if you don't meet some of the requirements of your contract, then the money gets
100%.
less. If so that way it becomes an even business market. You have a business, you have goods and services that you provide, and compensation for those goods and services. You don't deliver those goods and services, you don't get the compensation.
Yeah, I think the main thing that I want, like you said at the very beginning, you want people to get paid. Like people like, I'm going to use a Georgia reference, Rodrigo Blankenship with his glasses or his goggles that he wore during kicking would have made a bajillion dollars.
Oh, yeah. Respect the spec.
And I think you actually have a
I do.
shirt with like the
Oh,
little
I should have wore it.
goggles.
Yes. And that he probably got paid nothing for that
Yeah.
shirt.
Yeah. You got paid like nothing for that. And now you can see him on TikTok. I know you don't have TikTok, but you can see him on TikTok building Legos trying to make money. But
Nice.
And he's also
Attaboy.
kicking, and I would love him with the Falcons. But anyway, just talking about that. I'm okay with people making
Mhm.
money, but I think the fact that like high school kids coming out who have accomplished absolutely nothing, just saying Kirby Smart walks into your house and just like, yeah, we'll consider you give me $3 million for the first year. You ain't done nothing. You know how many 5 stars and 4 stars flame out and just
That's
suck?
right.
And there's 3 stars, like, for example, Justin Jefferson was like a 2 or 3 star. And a 5 star, like, I don't know if you recognize this name, but Cormani McLean was almost a perfect 5 star. He was a corner who went to go play for Dion. And I'm assuming that he got a good bit of money to go to Colorado since he was the number one corner. He couldn't even get on the field at Colorado, transfers to Florida. He still can't get on the field.
That's right.
So the fact that people are just wanting money and they haven't really proven anything, that's just stupid in my opinion. Now, I do like when you brought up with the performance incentives that give you more money. For example, like Jeremiah Smith, the season he
Okay.
has. He has all the right in the world to want as much money as he
Sure.
wants. He just had probably the greatest freshman receiving season we've ever
Agreed.
seen. Now, obviously, I
Electric.
haven't been alive for that long, but what he did against Oregon was I'll probably never
Woo.
forget that.
Yes. Agreed.
And I picked Oregon, by the
I
way.
know. I remember.
I wasn't recording a
I
podcast, but
remember.
I picked Oregon, and I was stupid. But like people like that, like they deserve to have money. But then somebody like I don't know exactly how much he got, but like Rashada, he's asking for a good bit of money. Like you haven't proven anything. You couldn't even beat Gunnar Stockton out for the backup
That's right.
job when Carson Beck went down. Like you couldn't even beat
Shout
that.
out Rabun
Or
County.
like yeah, no,
Sorry.
we don't talk about that. And yeah, my helmet still broke. Nitro just transferred. I think he's going to Purdue.
Yes,
I'm assuming that they paid him a pretty hefty
they
bag.
did.
Nitro couldn't get on the field when we led the nation in drops, and Arian Smith was playing every down. Speaking of which, if he gets drafted by the Falcons, I will. I don't know what I'll do. But
Combine
I will.
legend.
I'm gonna do something.
Combine legend
I'm
Arian
gonna do,
Smith. Yes.
I'm gonna do something. But anyway, I believe that people should get paid, but you have to see production, and people shouldn't just
Right.
expect. Bring it all back to Nico. Nico wanted more money because reportedly it was because of what he saw with Carson Beck, and I think you're better than Carson Beck.
Right.
Well, Nico, you haven't produced on the field. You don't deserve to get that type of money.
Yeah.
You got to produce. So that's just where I'm at it with all
I,
that.
I agree. And what's happening, I believe, is these kids are certainly they're signing agents, and so no different than pros. Their agents are being their advocate for them, and they're sitting at the negotiating table saying, "Well, my client here."
Which speaking of which, I learned in my sports management class that college agents are actually screwing over
Oh
college
yeah.
kids and getting way more of a percent than they actually should
Yes,
be.
that's absolutely
I don't know the
happening.
exact percent, but it was
Yes.
like the NFL agency was like this, and like the
Yeah,
college was like
that's
this thing.
100% happening, and the poor kids, they don't have the wherewithal to know that they're getting screwed in any kind of way. They don't know that, so they can be taken
Mhm.
advantage of like crazy. So these agents, these are talking on behalf of their client, and they're saying, "Well, my client, uh, you know, is a 5 star or whatever." And from watching some of your friends that went next level, the star system's flawed. The star system's absolutely flawed. Some of it, they're a
100%.
4 star, and just because they didn't go to this one camp, then they don't get their 5th star and this kind of stuff. But
Yeah,
so all that's kind of nonsense at the negotiating table, but it still is there. And they're saying, "Well, I'm this
I'm
star, I'm
still
that star,
there.
or whatever."
I
So
deserve this.
the other thing that I wanted to bring up is with the NIL situation, we opened a Pandora's box, and we can't. It's hard to get that genie back in the bottle. So there has to be rules. We immediately said when it happened. I remember you and I talking about this, about how this is going to now be like baseball, where it's just the haves and the have-nots, and you're going to have the expensive schools and the Texases and the people that where their boosters aren't rich, they're wealthy. There's a difference. They're wealthy.
There is a
Yeah,
big difference.
remember when, somebody was saying when Stetson was leaving, there was the talk of, "Hey, we need to get Kirby to put together a package and try to get that Arch Manning kid." And I'm just laughing going, "Texas people,
No.
we can't afford the kind of
It
money they can put
yeah,
together for Texas."
it says that Arch Manning's making, like, if I remember correctly, he's making, like, close to
Yeah.
10,000,000.
Oh.
I'm sure that number's
It's
closer to
ridiculous.
20.
People in Texas are not rich, they're wealthy. Those boosters are crazy. And so but the funny part about it is it comes back into the state tax thing we're talking about. That comes into play because we immediately said, "Well, here comes the return of, UCLA and USC, and the West Coast guys are gonna come back
Mhm.
into play," because, I mean, look at all the businesses that they can, use for NIL and all that stuff. But wait a minute, then the state tax thing came into play, and that evened the playing field because if a kid sees the state of Texas, no income tax on my NIL money, and state of California with their hand in my pocket, then of course they're going to go to Texas. But how it becomes the have and the have
100%.
nots, before I lose that point, the fear is where do these small schools, how can they even try to? Look, I'm going to tell you, Dabo was quick on saying, ugh, this is terrible. We need to get a handle on this. You know why he was quick to say that? Have you been to Clemson, South Carolina? What what kind of NIL stuff do they even have? You're going to be the commercial on the two car lots that they have there, and you're going to do those commercials. Another shout out to Coach Lance Helton. Let's say the ball states of the country. If you're in Muncie, Indiana, what do you have to lure a 5-star to your program? Ever?
You really don't. You got a chance in the world.
There's nothing. There's nothing. So the ball states of the world, how can they even kind of compete?
Another thing, I know we're talking about college football, but this is already happening with March Madness. March Madness is always about that for some reason St. John's is somehow about to beat Kansas. If you and I'm not in tune with college basketball, but when I was looking at the bracket, there were not many Cinderella stories anymore. It was all the big name teams. Why? Because Duke has 4 or 5 stars who are all going to be in the lottery this year.
That's right.
You just simply can't compete
Nope.
with that.
They
But keep
they
going.
have
What
they
were you
have they
saying?
have alumni with deep deep pockets, and that's what's going to happen. But look, you mentioned St. John's. That was another one that we thought, okay, is Big East basketball going to come back? Because there's some programs with some rich backings that are in the state of New York. Oh my gosh, they could. But here we go again. State of New York, income tax.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we can't compete. I'd rather go to the deep pockets of Durham, North Carolina, and not have to pay the exorbitant state taxes on my NIL money. You can't blame a kid for that. And so, I don't know.
I can't remember his exact name, but there's a 5-star tackle that Dion brought for Colorado. I think his name's Jordan Seaton or something
Okay.
like that. He was a All-American freshman team or whatever. Like really freaking good. He's probably their only good offensive lineman. But they also had a offensive lineman who was good. They have a center, Cash, and he was an all-conference like second team, something like really good. I think he's coming in as a
Okay.
sophomore, and after spring ball, he just entered the transfer portal because reportedly he got a lot of offers and stuff. And the Jordan Seaton guy for Colorado came out and said that when he was and this is all paraphrased, not exactly what he said, but what I got from his interview was he was talking about how college football used to be. It used to be like a brotherhood. Like you would grow up with you would pick a school and then you would grow and you would find yourself and you would grow closer as like a bond because football your teammates are your family
Fraternity. Yeah,
and
family, absolutely.
yeah you just get closer with them. But now what the transfer portal has done, that like the brotherhood is just gone because people just leave left, right, and center, and that's what college football used to be all
Mm.
about. And like we talk about, I know Georgia fans, but like now, if our second string guy who was like a 4-star or 5-star who after Jalen Walker graduates, okay, you're going to be the next in line, is not there anymore because he's chasing his bag and stuff like
Right.
that. So
And so,
it's
I will
just,
take that topic even further and say, the beauty of college football and college basketball, how it used to be, is those rivalries, is that the pageantry, is the traditions, is the all of these kind of
mhm.
things that made it so awesome. And heck, you even see rivalry stuff going away. I mean, you see, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, no,
Example: Trevor Etienne went from Florida to Georgia.
unheard of back in the day. Unheard
What?
of back in the day. And and just like, yeah, those guys are
Yeah,
cool. I
and
like them. Yeah, because they're all going to all these camps together and everything, and so I don't know. It's the AAU kind of situation. They all grow up together. They all know each other, so they're fine with teaming up and switching teams, and that's just part of this new generation. But what it does is it does destroy that whole rivalry situation. Um, I don't know. Times again, am I a dinosaur just squawking? Probably. But this generation does not seem to
no,
have any
no,
problems with
right,
transferring, with
right.
teaming up, with all of that kind of stuff.
No.
Whereas my generation probably wanted to beat each other and wanted to stay rivals forever.
Yeah,
So I
exactly.
don't.
I don't know, but you talking about how there has to be rules. There's got to be, and I think hopefully we're headed towards it now. There's still no commissioner or overheading government who is keeping everybody in check and has say over everything and absolute power. Maybe it's Nick Saban,
Ooh, good one.
like
I was about to
some
ask you, like, who would
people
be
have
your pick for
said.
commissioner?
Yeah,
It'd be
it'd
Saban.
be Nick
Yeah,
Saban or something like that,
yeah.
or people like that. Deion Sanders talked about it. We have to have a salary cap at some
Yep.
point. Like, it's just unfair that some people can just give endless amounts of money and some people just can't afford it. And
I'll just
that's
say
just
it this.
how sports are
I'll
going to
say it
die
this way
like
as my
in small
final
schools.
point. If we're gonna run it like pro sports, we've got to have the parameters and the checks and balances of pro sport. And that's where we're lacking right now. We're running it like a pro sport without the checks and balances of pro sports. So if we just simply apply that, which like what you're talking about, salary caps and contracts and these kind of things, then maybe this will all run smoother. But it's a pro sport. The cat's out of the bag.
Yeah, and one thing we didn't even mention, it's reported that Nico was going to hold out of the Ohio State Tennessee playoff game because they wanted a raise, and his dad, who's basically controlling everything, is like, no, we need more money to play in that game because that's an extra game. We need more money. So if we don't take the bull by the horns, to use an example, people may hold out of playoff games. And college football playoffs is a great idea, but if these guys don't play, what's the point of having an extra game?
Point. Man,
There's absolutely no
if your
point.
quarterback did that before such an important game, what would your conversation in the locker room be with him?
There wouldn't be a conversation. You'd be on the floor dead.
Yeah, I mean, how?
Ain't no
Uh,
conversation.
anyway, okay.
Ain't no conversation.
All right, I want to say thank you. This was a lot of fun. Look, for you viewers, this was no different than me and my son in the talking every day. This is what we do.
Even on the
Yeah.
phone before, during, and after my college classes, I'll just randomly
Yes,
call you
and
and
these are the
talk about this stuff. So.
conversations we have. We just didn't break bread. We should have ate, I guess, as we did this, and it would have been just like you're sitting in the kitchen at the house. So
Yeah, so I just want to thank you for coming on and talk about that because I know your expertise in college football, mainly because you're triple my age, maybe even quadruple. I still don't know your exact age, but anyway, thank you for having on.
absolutely,
And anytime you want to get on and talk about stuff, you're welcome to come on.
thank you. Go.
You have
Hey,
to be
let's
on.
get controversial. You want to go goat topic next? You want to go whatever? Oh yeah,
Oh,
yeah. Something with me and you can argue and we
yeah.
don't agree so much on would be great. So let's have at it.
Okay, anyway, but once again, thank you for coming on. You're always welcome. If you guys enjoy this episode, please give us a like, please subscribe, leave your comments, anything you have in the comment section below. And we'll see y'all next time. And bye. Oh, and there's my dog. Bye.